Nestled deep in the heart of the historic Ybor city, there is a place. A mysterious place in which cybersecurity folk call their home. Welcome to the Undercroft. These are the Cyber Chronicles.
Yes, indeed. Oh, wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. How absolutely titillating. Yes, yes, yes. Oh, hello there. I didn't see you come in. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Please, please, take a seat. Take a seat. I insist, I insist. Oh, you must be worn out and exhausted from your adventure here. Here at the Undercroft, you've joined me at my favorite time during the evening. A deep dive into hacker history at its finest. And, of course, if you're the CEO of Equifax, some of its not finest as well. Ah, yes. So during these Cyber Chronicles, as you may know, we are examining the most honorific guests, the most honorific points in time, and the most interesting points in time that we can discuss and discover together. Tonight, tonight we offer you a deep dive into one of the most interesting figures in Tampa Bay cybersecurity history. This person, well, who she may be, of course, is very, very important to the Undercroft history as well. Tonight, we discuss... yes, Joy Randels. Joy has been around for quite the long time in cybersecurity history and has seen all that this industry has come to offer. Some may even say that she predates, or at least her work does, the word cyber. Tonight, I, Sir Nigel Jammy Dodger, will be sitting down with Joy to discuss all there is to discuss about cybersecurity and hacker history. So come, my friend, join me. Sit, have some tea, put your feet up, and join me as we take a wild ride through the chronicles of the cyber adventures, or, well, yes, I see. Cyber Chronicles. Joy, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
I know you've been extremely busy this year, but first thing I gotta ask right off the grip, the hammer. What is the hammer?
So there's kind of a three-pronged approach to this. So early in my career, one of my partners, I made a remark. He's like, if you want it done, give it to Joy because she's the hammer. She'll just nail it.
Okay.
Then after that, a few years later, with my team, I decided that everyone basically has an equal share in the responsibility, right? So everybody on the team has a role to play, and one role is not more important than the other. But sometimes people go above and beyond. So I started this award called the Golden Hammer. So I literally had a gold-plated hammer.
Was it like effective?
In a shadow box. So I put it. It was a real hammer.
Okay. So they gold-plated a hammer.
Gold-plated
like if there was an active shooter situation or something, you could take the hammer down the wall.
Yep.
And immediately just okay.
So the Golden Hammer got given out each quarter to the team member, regardless of what their role was, that made the greatest contribution towards the success of the company.
Okay.
And then the story that you'll like. My mother-in-law, my late mother-in-law, was moving from Northern Virginia to Florida. She had known that she was going to be moving for about 6 months. She'd taken early retirement, selling her condo, all these other things. And so she had to clean out her house. She's very reluctant to do things like this. So all of a sudden I hear from Jeff's office, my better half's office, right? Okay, I'm done. I'm sending the hammer.
Okay, so Jeff said he's calling in the hammer.
And he goes, it will all be done in 5 days. That's it. And so I'm like, and he goes, yeah, I just bought you a plane ticket.
Oh.
And so it was all done in 5 days. So really it's all about having the ability to be able to be
So this
effective.
near legendary German efficiency. Okay. Where has that been applied? Throughout where has that been applied? Where has the hammer been called down?
Why don't you call Adam and ask him?
Adam, I don't even know where Adam is right now. But I mean, in the best examples, because I know you've done some private stuff. I know you've done some public sector stuff. I know you've been all over the place, and I also know that I think it was Adam who told me that you predate the word cyber.
Yes, it's true.
Okay. Let's start from there. So where did you get your start?
So I started before there really was anything called cybersecurity. There used to be this thing called IT security. Remember, like
information technology.
Yes.
That almost sounds more cohesive than cyber. Like,
but cyber applies to so many more things now, right? So cyber isn't just about IT per se any longer.
Okay.
Right? Cyber's everywhere, in everything we do.
So Raytheon, Brandon Ward, he came down here one day and he told us that they were developing a cyber missile. And that's whenever that's whenever I kind of found out that cyber just pretty much means does it mean whatever you want it to mean?
Well, I think cyber means anything that has a digital connection in some way, right? If you think about it. So some people would say it has to be connected to the internet, and technically almost everything is today, right? People don't realize that their automobiles have been connected to the internet for 2 decades.
What do you mean?
Okay, let's say you own a BMW.
Okay.
Your BMW is constantly uplinking the data from your car to BMW and has been for 25 years.
Okay, more like a luxury car kind of thing?
Well, I don't know if you call a GMC a luxury car, but
Gotcha.
So now it's pretty much universal at this point in time. Right?
Okay.
Your cars talk to the traffic light when you're sitting at the traffic light, right? There's
No shit.
LiDAR systems that are deployed all over the country looking at, what kind of vehicle or a bicycle or whatever is in plain view at every intersection almost all across America.
So
it's everywhere in Hillsborough County.
What is your car telling the traffic light?
Well, I want to know how many cars are in line. I want to be able to track how many cars come through. Anybody who believes that we're not being tracked, basically anytime we are outside the 4 walls of our home, is misguided.
I'm thinking more like, so if the traffic lights are intelligent, how the hell am I still spending 20 minutes at the corner of 19 and Tampa Road? Me particularly, they see me get in line for the shoot and they're like, oh, here's that blue piece of shit Honda Fit. 20 minutes. Okay, so...
No, but pretty much anything is connected to the internet. Think about it. So from our cars to now people, my refrigerator's not connected to the internet, but a lot of people have one that is, right? You've got all the different IoT devices, as we call them. I'm wearing a watch right now that, obviously is connected to a cell tower that's doing things like this. So it's really, really common. So it's either connected to the internet or internet enabled, almost everything we do. Maybe if you live in North Dakota, that's not the case, but...
That is where I will move. You've seen this come from the ground up, right?
Yeah, of course.
Did you think this is where we were going to end up?
No, but I would argue that Moore's Law doesn't even apply anymore because we don't have to wait that long. It's changing instantaneously.
Yeah, no, you have to wait. Yeah. What's Moore's Law, 2 years?
Yeah, so it's it doesn't happen like that anymore. It's it's eclipsing itself weekly now.
Okay.
And while it's been always evolving, I think the introduction of the smartphone was one of the big things. I mean, the fact that you can hold in the palm of your hand more computing power than you have on most computers even today, right?
Yeah.
It changed everything, and with the advent of the smartphone came the advent of social media, which also changed everything else on the other side of it, right? From privacy to other ways that we should be secure to what happens to our children and crap like TikTok and everything else underneath,
TikTok.
right?
Speaking of TikTok and social media, we both knew this was coming. The Earn It Act. What's your take on the Earn It Act? Could you give a little rundown for everybody watching at home? This thing's a dumpster fire.
Well, okay, so I'm pretty opinionated when it comes to security and privacy. I mean, I had a bunch of certifications, privacy being one of the big ones. So
okay.
For me, there's two parts of that, right? So there is somehow or another we're supposed to police the internet and Facebook or any other social media platform out there, or anyone, right? So you could have if you look at that act in its purest form, I could have a blog site, and if somebody guest posts on my blog site, I'm supposed to police whether that content is legit.
Mm-hmm.
Impossible. Absolutely impossible.
Yeah, Google just pulled that on, I want to say, the Federalist. Yeah, one of these publications. Yeah, so Google just deplatformed it from Google AdWords for not policing its.
I mean, the first big instance was Kim.com, right? That was the first big thing, right?
Kim.com.
And then you have like LimeWire, because people are sharing all this content that's out there.
That was Napster. Napster was the first, right? Yeah.
Napster, and like, yes, entries in Napster, and like, but you have all these pieces, right? There's no way, even as much money and as many resources as Facebook has, if Mark Zuckerberg were the most righteous man on the planet, there's absolutely no way they could police all of the content that is posted to Facebook.
When you say police the content, what do you mean by that?
Well, if I'm going to say, is it illegal, which is what the act says, right?
Okay.
Well, define illegal for me. Does that mean, I'm supposed to police, is it correct? Who decides whether it's correct or not?
Yeah.
If you tell me that I'm posting someone's intellectual property, I suppose we could say that's illegal.
Okay,
right?
sure. Yeah, copyright and all that. Yeah.
That's easy.
Yeah.
But that's not really where the act stops. It goes well beyond that into things that are very subjective. And who's supposed to decide that?
Mm-hmm.
Imagine if this actually went into place, what would do the court system?
What do you mean?
So let's say you did that and you said, I'm gonna make it illegal. So now we tell all these people. So now Facebook starts taking down posts, telling people their content is illegal. The feds show up at your door and arrest you for posting illegal content. Mm-hmm. Now what happens? Because you're going to go, it's not illegal. I had this content, or I didn't know. And now everybody goes to court to sue back and forth.
Yeah, you remember? I had to have been in high school for this, like mid to early 2000. Yeah, I guess end of 2000s, mid 2000s, when like the MPAA and the DIA. Right. Yeah, and like you had the cops showing up at like 15-year-olds' doors and kicking them down because they pirated a movie.
Right.
Okay, so
I don't think it's a particularly good use of our tax dollars, and we as individuals should be able to research things and determine if they're factual or not.
Okay.
Maybe that would up the intellect of people who are looking at the internet if we did that.
Sure.
Then the other side of that is the encryption piece, right? And saying, the government should be able to have a backdoor into, any type of encryption that's out there. Well, according to the Constitution, that's not legal.
What do you mean?
So the Constitution gives me my rights, right, to privacy and kind of things. So you're telling me that the government should be able to break the encryption in order to look at my private data?
Well, do you think they need it like a subpoena or like?
I think they need a court order if they want to come do that. There has to be some probable cause that what I have done is illegal or is in some way impacting another person, right? Mm-hmm. You can't just decide, I don't like you today, or I didn't like that content that you were posting because I don't like your political viewpoint.
Yeah.
So now someone is going to show up at your door and say, no, we're going to take that and now we're going to come after you.
That's kind of where I'm afraid of, and I understand, like, kind of like whenever Bush was talking about the Patriot Act and we need all this overhead in order to catch terrorists and unlikables.
How's that worked out?
That's kind of what I'm saying is, we're in like like the Patriot Act was signed into like 2002, 2001, right?
It's almost 20 years old.
Yeah, so it's almost 20 years old, and A, do we still need it, and B,
I don't think it's effective.
Yeah.
So, I understood the premise behind it,
okay.
and I certainly am supportive of things that will protect us against acts of terrorism. There's no question about that. Mm-hmm. I'm not so sure that has done what the intent was behind it.
Okay. So with the Earn It Act, do you think they're being earnest about it, or just because
I think it's political.
That's what I'm trying to ask. Because I just see it being used as a cudgel to read the mail.
I'm a pretty big believer. Like, I was really happy when Apple stood up and didn't actually turn everything over. Mm-hmm. I've got an iPhone, it's got this. It's like, well, I'm not going to make every other user of my product vulnerable because you want to go about it this way.
Unless you're in China.
Well, China could be a whole 4-day long conversation about China. Okay. But in that particular case, I think they were within their rights to say, no, we're not going to do that because now we jeopardize all of our users. We put everyone at risk. Because once we break encryption for one entity, we all know, anybody who works in cyber knows, once it's broken, it's broken.
Yes. So, you've been in this industry for at least longer than I've been alive.
I don't know exactly how old you are, but probably yes.
Okay, so at least 30 years. At least 30 years. Do you think that all of these companies are doing it out of a altruistic need to keep privacy in the United States, or do you think they're just doing it because, I don't want to use capitalism because that's a buzzword, but do you think they're doing it because the customers wouldn't tolerate it? Just because, like, they're doing one thing over here in the States and another thing over here in China.
Well, but the Chinese government decides what happens in China.
Yes.
So I've also built businesses and had offices in China.
Okay.
The government doesn't give you, the government, hey.
Yeah, sure.
I didn't start the business there, but we had a presence in China.
Okay.
Right?
Well,
the government dictates what you can and cannot do. It's very, very clear. So there's a reason you have a separate entity to do the operations in China from what you have in the U.S. because I don't want their tentacles into the things that are here. That particular company, we were selling to both the public and private sector.
In China?
The company that we had doing things in China, yes.
Yeah.
So we're selling actually to the railroad system in China.
Okay.
Okay. But that's actually partially owned by the Chinese government. Not surprising.
Sure.
That would be the case.
There's two kinds of things in China. Owned by the Chinese.
Yes, right. But the reality, I can't have that touch the entity, even though it might be the same product, I can't have it touch the entity that I'm selling to the US government. Right? There's a very odd thing that happens there. But all I would say is in that case, the government has a completely different type of oversight. Our government, the citizens of this country would never tolerate the oversight that exists in China.
Yes.
The way the country was founded is completely anti to that in the first place.
And that's what kind of, like, I want to believe that, but then I start seeing all this support building up on Twitter, social media. I mean, not from cybersecurity, because I'm pretty sure in this industry, if you supported to earn it, you'd be made a pariah, like, overnight.
Yes, I think that's true.
So, I mean, where do you think the American populace sees this and is like, oh, okay, this makes sense?
I think they don't know what they don't know.
Okay. Interesting.
So I don't think people understand how much of their privacy they've already given up. Every time you accept a EULA, an end user license agreement, right? People don't read those. The average person does not read what that document says.
Yeah.
In almost every case, you are giving up your data today.
Okay.
Because data, you as an individual and the data, what you do is the most valuable commodity on the planet today.
Yes.
I can use that for so many reasons across virtually every industry. So every time you say, yep, I'm good, and you find out that they tracked what you did, everywhere you went, which bank account you used, right? If you looked at how many, particularly like the apps and things that are on your phone, how much cross-pollination occurs there, people would be scared to death. But most people don't know that, nor do they take the time to look at it. To figure that out.
If you look at TikTok, I mean, you see they're collecting all of that. And this is what I feel like I'm starting to explain this to my friends and family who aren't in this industry and don't understand privacy and not privacy, is, well, why does the Chinese government want my data? What are they going to do with it? They're not going to sell me anything. What, I mean, yeah.
Well, a ton of things that you buy today that you probably aren't aware of actually come from China.
Yes.
And if you have paid any attention to the economics in our country, you will see how much the Chinese now own of our country.
Yes.
On the other side of that. And those interests being tied back to the Chinese government. And I'm going to leave out all the conspiracy theories. I'm talking about actual fact, right? From that perspective. And so I think we just have to be cognizant of, I'm not saying you can't put the genie back in the bottle. You're not going to be able to go back and say, oh, there's not going to be a smartphone or social media or any of that other stuff, right?
But you can EMP the country.
Right. But at what point in time are you going to say, I have to be responsible for my own security, my own privacy, those type of things. I have to take accountability for that. Or I just accept that, I don't really care what happens, and, if all the data collected allows another, country to invade our country, and, we change everything, that's okay.
So there had to have been like a 3 a.m. conversation between the normal group out there on the patio, and Count Zero, our beloved Count, brought up whenever people realize, like with streaming and with streaming music, with streaming video games, that you don't really own the thing. Right. And that you're owning it on a license. I mean, do you think people are going to eventually wake up to that, or
No?
No.
I think we've become a consumption society, and that's not going to go away, unfortunately.
Okay. I mean, so they're like, what do you think has to happen in order for the American populace to realize, like, oh, this is screwing me, this is bad?
I think I just think we've become this consumption society, and so instead of looking at, think about years ago, right, like your parents, right, they were probably saving money, right, they're like, oh, I'm going to save up money to,
my
for
parents.
this. Okay. Most people's parents at some point in time were saving money and doing things like this, right, so people were saving money, putting money away. I think now, societally, there's so many people that live paycheck to paycheck. Some of it is without their actual knowledge. They don't really have a choice, right? Mm-hmm. Economic policies and things have changed. Some of it is, oh, it's okay as long as I have enough money to pay the next bill, it's all right. Mm-hmm. Well, that's one of the reasons we ended up in this consumption economy, because versus saving up money and then buying something and owning it, we said, well, what if we just lease it all, right?
Yeah.
Because that's what we're actually doing. We're leasing it, right? Anything that is a SaaS model or a subscription model is a lease. That's the best way to look at it.
And my generation buys into that, especially the millennials, because we're like, okay, so we have $20. What can we do to stretch these $20 so we can have the most amount of things? And you have, Rick, the music salesman over here with Apple Music, like, well, if you pay $10 instead of $15, you could still listen to the music. You might not own it, but you can still listen to it. And the millennials are like, oh, okay. That means I have now $10 instead of $5. Sign me up.
And I think for some things it's okay. It's not really okay for our privacy and our security. Mm-hmm. I mean, if you think about it, probably one of the biggest vulnerable spots is your children. So people who have, small children, or teenagers even, right? There's a scenario where these people now, you're giving your kid who's 5 or 3 an iPad, mm-hmm. and if you think for a second that everything that kid does on that iPad isn't tracked and that they're not going to be marketed to for that, and that they don't track back that oh, that kid belongs to this parent who lives at this address, well, it's all tied together. I mean, the data is the new oil, for lack of a better term.
Gotcha. And I guess what I'm wondering, and I don't have the expertise nor the time in this industry to answer this, what has to happen for us to go back on that? What has to happen for us to put the genie back in the bottle, or is it just always going to be like this forever?
I think it would have to be so catastrophic that it impacted the majority of society.
Okay. So if Netflix went down for...
That would do it.
No?
No. And when I say impacted, I mean like a serious impact, not like a minor inconvenience. Like Netflix going down, that's an inconvenience, right?
Okay.
I'm talking about like people dying. I'm talking about things like that.
Okay.
Because Netflix going down, like we accept that, right? Oh, my internet went out, it'll be back, blah, blah, blah. Right?
If you look on Twitter when Netflix goes down, it's like just an army of screaming millennials coming at you.
Well, it is.
Yeah.
But then Netflix goes and reboots their servers, and the world comes back to normal.
Almost instantaneously they forget, like, what was I mad about again?
Right. I mean, it's like those kind of things. I think streaming is here to stay. I don't think streaming's necessarily bad. Mm-hmm. That doesn't really concern me so much. I guess it depends on what you watch when you're streaming, if you care if people know, right? Like,
yes.
That's what you watch.
What do you mean by that?
I'm just saying there's things that maybe people wouldn't want to have sold what they're viewing.
Do you think that's happening?
Yes.
Okay. Can you go more in depth about that? So if Sean Latona is sitting at home and he's watching Vampire Bride 7 and somebody's trying to profile it, like, people know about that?
Sure. I mean, think about it. Today, think about all of the breaches that have happened just over, we'll say the last 10 years, right? So everything from the OPM breach, right? For anybody who's
I got victimized by that. Yay!
Right, to Equifax, to Home Depot, to Citigroup. I mean, like literally 78% of the population of the United States has experienced their identity being stolen. Now, all of that data is for sale on the dark web for pennies, right? And you combine that with the publicly available data about us as people, like the DMV, who lives in what house, right, with the property that you own. Also, it's really easy to make a composite of a huge chunk of our population. Now I can track back and say, oh, well, this is what they watch on TV. And this is where they surf the web because I'm tracking with all these cookies and all the other things, right? I mean, I can social engineer pretty much anyone. Are you kidding?
I'm looking at the events channel right now, and I guess a huge conversation is broken out about people's porn habits getting leaked out, and then what happens whenever.
Okay, so what was the site that was the cheating site? Madison, right?
Yeah, Ashley Madison.
Ashley Madison,
Holy
right?
shit, I remember that. I think I was like still in the Marine Corps for that.
So now, right, everybody knows like all of these people who are paying escorts and hooking up with other people, and so like this person hooking up with that person. So all of these people who are married, right, now their spouses all know who they're hooking up with.
Fuck you. Yeah.
I mean, that would be great for divorce court, right? I mean, it's like,
yeah.
I right here.
I mean, if anything, if we're truly a capitalistic society, I think we should build a TV show revolving around those people getting divorced.
Well, that would actually be something that MTA would probably buy.
Yeah,
right
that's
into.
tea right there.
Right.
Somebody's asking a question. How do we build systems backed by homomorphic encryption such that people can manage... What's up?
Keep going.
Okay. Backed by homomorphic encryption such that people can manage their encryption keys themselves in a responsible way. That was from Keen Blaine. I don't know what the hell that means. I see homomorphic and I'm like, ha ha! Chris, could you grab me another White Claw by chance? No? Okay, whatever.
I think that, wow, how could we get...
What is homomorphic?
I'm not sure I have the answer to that question.
What the hell did I just ask?
I'm like...
Homomorphic encryption. What the hell did I just ask? I'm not, TLDR. Okay.
Yeah, I think the person asking the question is better equipped to answer that than I am.
Ian? Okay.
I mean, I understand encryption. I've done lots of encryption. I'm not sure.
I'm a theory guy.
But thinking about how you would build it back from the ground up, I don't know the answer to that question.
Okay. I guess now that I think about it, I'm kind of part of the problem if I don't understand these encryption methods.
Okay, but so that's the thing. When we talk about cybersecurity, right?
Yeah.
People are like, oh, I want a career in cybersecurity. I want to do this. I want to do that, right? Just like what we're doing with the UC baseline courses. So we're offering up these courses for people who are making those transitions.
What is UC Baseline?
So UC Baseline is 6 courses.
Thank you.
Launching on the 20th of this month.
Okay.
And they are hardware. We have networking. We have Linux. We have Windows. We have Python. And we have InfoSec.
Yep.
Right? So they're designed for people who are students who are moving out into the workforce, for people who are transitioning from traditional IT roles into cyber roles, for somebody who wants to pick, so you can take the whole course, you can take all of them, or you could take just one.
Okay.
So maybe you just really want to learn Python, right? And you want to learn how that, not just basic Python, but you kind of want to get to the, the nitty gritty of Python. So you could just take the Python course and brush up on your skills on that, or it's a gap that's in your career set. But when we think about cyber, right, there are so many careers. I mean, there's thousands of careers in cybersecurity. And there's this misconception that everything is a hunter, right? Because that's what's glamorized on TV. And we need hunters. So we absolutely need hunters.
What do you mean by hunters?
So you have... Oh, I guess we should talk about red team, blue team, purple team then if we're going to go there, right?
Well, I mean, if you mean by hunters, you mean like the red teamers, the pen testers and stuff?
Yeah, so we're gathering it. We're actually looking for the threat. We're tracking the threat down.
Okay,
right?
I can think of all the people in the back of my head that I work with that say, like, this country's too defensive. We teach too much blue team, too defensive. Nobody knows, like...
Well, but you need both sides, right? I mean, to be effective, you need both sides. So there has to be, just like in war, which this is a war, if you look at it really at the end of the day, right? There's an aggressor, and there's a defender. It's how it works, right? So we absolutely should do all the things we can to put the defenses out to try to protect the best we can. We'll never be 100% effective, so therefore, we have to have the other side of the equation.
What do you think? I mean, Baseline had to have arisen to fill some kind of gap in the current education, how do you think the current education model that the United States is promulgating, where you go to college, learn how to hack, cybersecurity, whatever, and then you go to work, how do you think that's working out?
Not so great.
I mean, you already know my answer, that the United States is absolutely fucking failing at it, but...
So it's interesting. So, I have a couple opinions on that. So when it comes to cyber, we can teach certain things. There's academic things we can teach. We can teach you the OSI model. We can teach you, proactive defense. I can teach you about firewalls. We can learn all these other things, right?
Mm-hmm.
You need to know those things. Those are good, right? I'm not going to teach you how to think.
Yep.
Right? Because I can't teach you how to think out of a book.
And that's the issue. I mean, I'm in school right now, and the issue I'm seeing is these kids being told by academic advisors and professors, sit here for 4 years, do exactly what we tell you, be buddies with your professors, don't do any outside research unless you want to stick out, but it's not needed, and then in 4 years you'll fall into your Scrooge McDuck money bin.
Well, so the whole reason, right, for baseline, and even why the undercroft existed, right, is to help fill that gap.
Okay.
To be a home and to be a 360-degree organization
Mm-hmm.
for people who are brand new to people who are absolutely the tops in their field, right? And we have all of those people as a part of our organization today. When you start to think about, right, how would this work as it relates to baseline,
Mm-hmm.
one of the things that we learned in talking to not only the people who are members of the guild, but also, so like the apprentice level people who are in the guild,
Yep.
up through going out and talking to the universities and seeing what they're offering and what's missing from what they're offering. Nothing against universities. I have no problem with them.
Mm-hmm.
I think that you can get some good baseline information out of going to a university, and you learn other things while you're in college. And then talking to actual employers and what are the skills that they're looking for that they can't find, because we have 3.6 million jobs that aren't filled right now today in cybersecurity.
And that's my big tip with that, is this isn't like, oh no, we don't have 3.6 million architects who will design this building. It's like, we don't have 3.6 million people that are going to defend our shit. Like,
Right. Well, it is actually the fastest growing career in the United States today. It's only going to grow more.
But
it's a recession-proof career, for lack of a better term.
yes, all these students hear that and they're like, oh, okay, sign me up. But I mean, I guess
But
what
you
the
have to move beyond that. So,
Yeah, what-
to your point, right? I've got to come in. So what Baseline was designed to do
Mhm.
is it's taught. So it's developed and taught by experts, right?
I
People who
wouldn't
are
call
members
myself
of
an expert, but
No, but people who are experts in their specific domain,
Mhm.
right? So to the point, if there's all these different cyber domains, no one's going to be an expert at all of them, but being an expert in that one, creating, courseware that's designed that way, and it will be delivered by those people, not delivered by somebody who doesn't practice it every day. These guys
Yep.
and girls, right, practice this every single day in real world environments dealing with real problems.
that's a big, and you actually, that's interesting you brought that up, because how many college professors, like, I can imagine be minuscule, the amount of college professors that are like, hey, when's the last time you've sat in a SOC, or when's the last time you've done a pen test?
Right.
And,
So,
like,
I mean, I'm not poo-pooing traditional education. I'm just saying that to get the real world skills, which is what employers want to hire for, or if you're going to be your own consultant, what you need to have to go out and do this, then you've got to have hands-on in real world situations. So all of these are primarily lab-based, right? There's some other courseware to go along with it, but the intent is real world scenarios and being able to execute in real world scenarios. So that was the whole point behind it.
how do you think that plays into what companies are looking for? Because
They've told us.
Well,
So these are the skills that they can't find people to come in with those skills that have any practical experience.
Yeah, do you remember whenever like corporate America was first starting to get caught on to ethical hacking, and eventually it first turned into, okay, ethical hacker, fresh out of college. If you don't have your CISSP, we're not looking at you.
Okay, so I'm going to say a couple of things. So I thought that the Workforce Act that got signed last week is pretty cool.
What's that?
So it's the American Workforce Advisory, the group was made up of everything from like community colleges to employers to higher ed. So basically, it says the government can no longer exclude you from a job for not having a college degree.
Ooh.
So meaning that you have to at least get
Shit.
the chance to be interviewed. So they can say, oh, you're not the
Yeah.
right candidate.
Yeah.
But previously, right, almost every decent government job, every federal job,
I mean,
right,
even corporate jobs.
required
Yeah.
that you have a degree.
Yeah.
So now they're saying, hey, we value skills over the degree.
Shit. Okay.
So the government was kind of lagging because Apple's done that for quite a long time. So
Yeah.
Alphabet, IBM, JP Morgan Chase just came out and said they're going to do the same thing.
Okay.
So you're starting to see kind of a little bit of a twist to that. It doesn't mean that people shouldn't still go get a college degree. And if you're going to like perform surgery or you're going to run a nuclear reactor, I'm all for you going
Yes.
to, right? But it also means that even with college degrees, they can't find the skills that they need.
Well, when you were first getting started, what was the skill set that you...
I don't have a college degree. I dropped out.
Okay. I mean...
I went to college, but I dropped out.
I respect you very heavily. I just gained more respect for you just because I'm all about, like, fuck the man.
36 million people in our country, in the workforce today, have some college, but no credential, right? They didn't graduate. Do we really want to exclude all of those people who may have 10, 20 years of practical experience in their field from real jobs? It doesn't seem to me like that's very logical.
What were they asking back whenever you were first getting started, even to whenever? Maybe
I've been excluded before. Like you can't get an interview.
What were they asking for?
Oh, you want at least a bachelor's degree, right?
Okay.
But that's the thing, right? HR puts out, you need a bachelor's degree just to kind of get the interview.
Yeah.
How many times have you, if you've gone for an interview, has anybody ever said, well, what was your major? Like, does it really
Or like,
matter?
where did you go to school?
Where'd you go to school?
Yeah.
Like, well, unless you went to MIT or Cornell, like, nobody really cares at the end of the day, right?
I mean, maybe that could be like back in the 50s, 60s, 70s, back when you had.
But it was different then, right? And
and
college degrees didn't cost $100,000 or more.
Mm-hmm.
Like my niece is in college right now. When she graduates after to get her bachelor's degree, it's going to cost $160,000.
Okay.
How long does it take you to pay back
and
that?
That's especially if you can't land a gig.
Well, or if you graduate, and like the average college graduate today, graduating from college earns less than $35,000 a year.
Yeah.
So at $35,000 a year, it's going to take you a really long time to pay back $160K.
And meanwhile, baseline, I don't know how much baseline is. You have like, Udemy courses anywhere from $20 to $200. You have that Google Coursera thing going on. And I guess what I'm interested to see is, are these businesses looking to hire these 3.5, 3.6 million people eventually going to catch up? I mean, we see it all the time. These people asking for unicorns where it's like, 3 years of experience, your OSCP, and we'll pay you $50,000. And even people graduating from college are like, what? No, fuck that.
Well, I would argue some employers are going to actually have to pay market rate if they want to get quality people. So they're going to have to do that.
You hear that? Any employer who's watching, like, listen to what she just said.
So, I mean, we paid market rate for our employees when we do this, and we have 2 security businesses, and so we pay market rate because we want good people. And in some cases, we pay above market rate. It depends on the skill set you're looking for. Mm-hmm. You're not going to go find the top forensics person and pay them, $100K a year, because there's 50 other people who will pay them twice or 3 times that.
Yes.
And that's understandable. So, I think you have to first start by paying a reasonable salary. Mm-hmm. But even with a reasonable salary, they still can't fill these positions because there just flat out aren't enough people.
Yep.
It's not going to go back, like we're talking about not putting the genie back in the bottle. It's not going to change because there's always going to be another threat, a bigger threat, right, at the end of the day. And state-sponsored actors are always going to have the upper hand. The bad guys will always have the upper hand because they're better financed at the end of the day.
Yep.
Less regulation.
Well, I mean, less regulation, like we heard from the sound and light fairy back there. Oh, I mean, it is less regulation because nowadays.
Well, I don't have to play by the rules. I can do whatever I want, right?
I mean, if I'm a Chinese cyber militia member, I can do whatever the hell I want.
Okay, not even picking on China. We could talk about a whole lot of other countries.
Oh, okay. So if my name's Anton Cherkov and I'm outside Novgorod and
there's plenty of like.
Yeah, sure. Romania, my homie's in Russia.
Yeah.
If you're a Russian guy named Evgeny and you decide to steal, something from wherever the hell in America, you won't get.
You're gonna get lit up right now on the private channel in about 2 seconds, but no. It's okay.
Probably. Well, the point I'm just saying is, if I steal from something in America, the odds, I'd imagine the penalty being a lot less steeper than if I am here in the United States and I see me getting, DOS from Nigeria or something.
Sure,
so it's like, okay, good, asshole, you want to play that? And then I DOS him back. And then, the ATF or...
shows up at your doorstep, yeah.
Yeah, shows up at the door, kills my dog, and then drags me off to jail.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that could happen.
Okay. Wow, we got way off topic.
We did.
But I'm okay with this. What do you think needs to happen with the education system? I mean, just because you and I have both met a lot of these people in the guild that are apprentices, and they're like I could think of 2 people. One of them working for Cam. That's like, I've got a 4-year degree. I can't seem to get hired. What the, like, I see this $3.6 million job deficit. Why can't I get hired?
I think, so I would say, even if you're the best at what you do technically, if you don't possess the appropriate soft skills and you don't really understand how to present yourself, you'll be challenged.
Okay.
It's actually one of the things that's come out in polling the guild members on what they want to see. So we're looking at putting some things together to kind of help with that.
Like soft skills?
Yeah, because I think the reality is, like, how do you present yourself? What should your CV actually look like when you're sending it in? Are there things that you need to learn in going through the interview process or standing in front of a potential client or those kind of things? And, I think sometimes it takes a little bit of experience, but more often than not, those are just things that you're not taught, and you don't know what you don't know. Also, a lot of times, the people who are, well over half of the people who are practitioners are more introverted than extroverted. And it's not something that comes so natural to those people to do that. It doesn't mean they can't learn it or they can't perfect it. They absolutely can.
There's a former SF guy that I know who he just got hired to work in a SOC, and he's moving his way up to pen tester, and he walked in and he was like, what the hell are all these amorphous blobs I'm working with? Like, what the hell is this?
It's very different. So, you're talking about the hammer thing and all the other stuff. So I'm an ENTJ, which is 0.07% of the female population, and only less than 2% of the overall population of the world. So I'm an extroverted person who just kind of drives all the time. I happen to live with an INTJ, who's an introverted person who drives all the time.
That's me.
Oh, no. So it's actually okay, because the reality is he's taught himself. And so to the point, he's far more credentialed than I am and knows more than, he's probably forgotten more than I know at the end of the day. But I mean, he came up on the engineering side of the house. So comp sci mathematics double major, loves statistical analysis.
Yeah, one of your typical, CS majors, pocket protector wearing fucks. Yeah, those.
Well, he went to school at VMI, so
okay.
A little different. But from that perspective, but I mean, he's been at this for a really long time for multiple different companies, and he's been everything from, I'm going to put together a computer and build it from the ground up to I've got a top-end practice dealing with the C-level board executives. But he's basically, taught himself the soft skills, put in the work to kind of develop those soft skills to be able to stand in front of pretty much anybody and be really comfortable with it. So I fully know that people can do it if it's something that they want to do and are willing to apply themselves.
Okay. So what advice would you, if we have those apprentices or, these, level 1 college students that are sitting there saying, I see the job gap, I see they need me, but everybody's telling me to go fuck myself. What can I do?
Come become a member of the Undercroft and we'll help you.
I set you right up for that. Holy shit!
It wasn't supposed to be an advertorial, but hey, there you go. I'm like, because I mean that's what we're all about, right? And I mean the reality is the programs are. So if you're an apprentice coming in, then there's going to be journeymen that'll help you, right? And masters that will help the journeyman. I mean, so it's really designed to be that.
Speaking of which, I'm looking at the events channel. All these incels are just roasting me right now. It's getting pretty savage.
Yeah. So we should probably change the subject.
Okay, so going back to you set up shop in China. What was that like?
It's weird. It's
really
weird. Yeah, it is. I mean, because the government dictates what you can and can't do, who you can and can't hire.
I'd go nuts.
It's a weird thing.
Was this pre or post social credit score?
Pre. But it's very interesting. So I came into this company. I got brought into this particular company by the venture capitalist who wanted the company turned around.
Venture capitalist in China. God, the irony.
Well, they're venture capitalists in the United States, so they weren't venture capitalists in China.
Okay.
But they had invested a lot of money into this particular company, and it had not ever really kind of returned, and they'd had like 6 consecutive down quarters.
So they brought in the hammer.
Yes. And so I came in. We ended up closing our operations in China because I was just like, this is stupid, and we're never going to get anywhere with this. Like, well, we closed China and we closed Japan, so we had a KK separate corporation in Japan as well. And the problem is, if you're not going to be local and you don't have local people working for you, it's extremely difficult, and it takes years. So to me, it's like. And it also causes problems, quite frankly, dealing with the American government. And we were selling a lot of product to the U.S. government. So which customer would I rather have at the end of the day? Mm-hmm. So it was like, nope, we're selling basically because we sold very high-end equipment hardware and software. Some that sits in a little glass room in a building not too far from here.
Oh.
Okay.
Okay.
And others that sits on the trading floor of the largest trading floors in the world.
Okay.
So we would much rather, in my opinion, those clients are much more profitable, much easier to deal with.
Mm-hmm.
So why would I want to get on a plane and fly for a day and a half to get to China to, go do business there,
Mm-hmm.
to be ushered around and kind of watch everything I do, everything I say, and know that I'm being watched the entire time.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, judging, I take it was cybersecurity or IT related.
Yes.
Doing business with people over here versus doing business over there, were they weirded out to see? I mean,
No, not really. I mean,
really?
they do business with people who are, Americans and Europeans and stuff all the time.
Mm-hmm.
So no, that was actually okay. We never sold the true cyber product to China
Okay.
or Japan for that
Okay.
matter. So there's some contractual agreements that preclude that from ever happening, right?
Yeah.
On the software side,
the
the
government-
hardware
the government would go
components,
nuts.
the naked hardware components could absolutely be sold there. So
Yeah. Okay. Where'd you go after that? Once you said, "Fuck this, I'm done with China."
We expanded our operations in Europe, which worked out really well, and we had our operations here. So we grew the operations that were here. And about 50% of our business was public sector and 50% private sector for that particular company.
Okay.
And that company's still in existence today, by the way. We
Okay.
spun off the software division. It was a separate company that ultimately got acquired, and then the hardware company is still in existence and operating today.
So then you're just going around hammering shit, getting stuff done, and then you meet how did you get involved with Adam in the Undercroft?
So Adam reached out to me. I'm not actually sure how Adam found me, to be honest.
You got down in the DMs, okay.
So he reached out to me and said, hey, and this was actually almost 3 years ago.
Okay.
So before there was ever an Undercroft at all. And said, I have two people who I'm looking at this idea, and it was a completely different idea at the time. Can I come buy you lunch? I'm like, okay.
Free lunch?
I'm like, sure, you can do that. So we went and had lunch. I met the other two guys, one of the people who I'm not going to name. We started talking about some of the work that we've done with the NSA in the past, and then realized we couldn't have any more conversation while we were at a table together with other people present.
Where'd you guys go?
We went to a place called Pier 22 on the
I
water.
know
in
exactly
Essex.
where Pier 22.
I'm like,
That's okay. That's like a waspy place, kind of.
It is a waspy place,
Yeah,
right?
okay.
So we were having lunch, but it was a really interesting conversation, and we kind of talked about underwater cabling and a few other things that we kind of knew about, like
Underwater cabling.
underwater cabling.
Underwater cabling.
Yes.
Okay.
And a few other things, and like different ports on different networks and that sort of stuff.
Gotcha.
So it was a really good conversation, and then Adam and I continued to stay in contact, and then he reached out to me about 6 months later and said, hey, those guys decided not to kind of go do the thing I want to go do, but I have this other idea. Can we talk about it? And so I said, yeah, I think the idea of what you want to do with the Undercroft, I said, it's a really good idea. And he's like, will you help? And I'm like, okay. And that's how it all came about.
Okay.
It was literally just that, because I think it's something that there truly is a need for. I don't know of any other organization that's doing what the Undercroft is doing the way that they're doing it. And that's how I became the chairman of the board.
Okay. What are you looking to get out of your Undercroft experience? What are you trying to set this up to be?
I want to see us create a whole tribe of cyber warriors. That's the objective.
What does cyber warrior mean in Hammer speak?
In Hammer speak?
Yeah.
Like top-notch cyber professionals. So I don't really care if you want to be red team, blue team, purple team. Doesn't really matter to me. You can pick your flavor. Right?
Gotcha.
At the end of the day. But we have a need that's never going to go away as we continue, technology, right, continues to evolve, to have people to be able to mitigate risk, right, to fight the threat. So if you want to go be the world's greatest pen tester, good for you. If you want to be a CISO, good for you. You want to be in computer forensics, you want to be the top risk person, doesn't really matter to me, but it's all kind of tied together. And because it's now impacting everything from the time our kids are born until people die, and our daily lives, somebody needs to do this, or we're all going to be in a really big hurt.
Now, we see this, and I'm actually I kind of shill this, the idea of it being kind of the same homogenous crowd in cyber of like your white bespectacled, I don't want to say white bespectacled, your typical like your bespectacled Star Trek watching, pocket protector wearing dudes.
Right.
Do we need to reach outside of that?
I don't know, do you?
Well, obviously the answer is fucking yes, but I'm trying to get you to elaborate.
So it's pretty funny. So I've grown up, right, being in technology and then in cyber, being the only girl in the room. It's not like it's uncommon for me. Mm-hmm. It's a little bit of a problem though. Although it was pretty funny. I sent out a tweet about 2 years ago at RSA of the ladies' bathroom. And like literally it's completely vacant. The 2 bathrooms and there's like 50 dudes lined up and there's like no line in the women's room. Like that never happens. Yeah. So it was cute but also sad, right? At the same point in time, because there's certainly not an equal distribution of people. Yes. But I'm also a different minority too that maybe a lot of people don't really know about either. So I'm Native American and Irish. Okay. So and in the summertime, if I get outside, which I haven't been outside at all this year,
now they're calling me racist in the fucking chat.
Why? Why is this racist?
Paul's calling me racist.
Oh, against white people?
Yeah.
Racist against white people. Okay, fine,
Sorry,
whatever.
Continue. Fuck you, Paul.
It's like, so the reality is we always should look to try to have a diverse group of people. I don't really care what the industry is, but we should look at that because they bring different strengths and weaknesses to the table and different ways of looking at problems. So yeah, I absolutely think we should do that. We are seeing more women. I will say I see more women now than I did before. Mm-hmm. I see more people of color that are there. I think that, but I can't change what people want to pursue. So the only way we can make it work better is you have to make the environment more welcoming. Mm-hmm. And then some people will start to come and eventually it will change. I will say, however, on the flip side of that, when it comes to the cyber security world, where we have all of these Me Too moments, we have all this other stuff, right, in society and all the other stuff that's like that. For me personally, I can literally count on one hand the number of times that I believe I was singled out and treated differently, intentionally treated differently because of being female.
Positively or negatively?
Negatively.
Okay.
Right? So I don't want to be treated either way. I just want to be treated like everybody else. Mm-hmm. Right? To me, that's it. I only want a level playing ground. Okay. And if I can't perform, then that's on me. Mm-hmm. Right? So I don't believe in special treatment. I believe in equal treatment.
Gotcha.
And then we all have an opportunity to perform, regardless of who we are.
And how do you see the avenue to that coming into the cybersecurity? Like, do you think that the curriculum needs to change? What needs to change or happen?
It's very interesting that you bring it up. So we're talking, I'm going to kind of take it off track just a little bit because I was talking to somebody about AI. There's a bunch of things coming up about AI. Okay. Well, here's a problem with AI. We train AI, right? Mm-hmm.
Well, I don't know dick about AI, to be honest with you. So.
Well, you better, because it's related to cyber. So
I know.
You better get with the program, dude.
I'm getting there.
So with AI, right, we feed it data to have it learn, just like we feed humans data to have them learn, right? Mm-hmm. If all the data that I'm giving you as an AI algorithm is the past 150 years of data, what's wrong with that equation?
You're not factoring for how we got to that 150 years.
No, it's not that at all. It's so almost everything, every position of power is referred to as he, not she. Okay. Right? We treat people who are of a different race differently. Mm-hmm. So all of those biases that were there for all that time period are being fed into the AI. Okay. So if that's the case.
So we've created a Hitler AI.
Okay, not but you get my point, right? There's all this unconscious bias, okay, now gets fed into this machine, so that impacts how it performs. So we have to first start looking at, like, how do we correct that if we're going to really use the AI going forward? And to me, I think the other thing is we just have to recognize that, hey, we should treat people equally. I don't want people to feel like, oh, they can never open their mouth, because I don't think that's particularly helpful either. Mm-hmm. At the end of the day, I'm not offended by a lot of things that many other females are.
Can confirm.
But I also try to be conscious of the fact that when I'm doing or saying things, I have to be conscious of the fact of other people, male or female, mm-hmm. that could be offended by things that are said or done. And so I think it's just understanding that we need to be conscious of it. I will say that, for me, like I've found working side by side with guys most of the time, as long as you're, they're super happy to have you. I've just really never had as many problems. Like I said, I could count them on one hand.
Mm-hmm.
I could name those people, but I won't.
And this is where the show takes an interesting turn.
But I mean, it's just, I also think part of that is us as females. I'm going to speak from a female perspective, right? We also have to, that was funny.
No, this guy just put some AIs are racist.
Oh. So,
It is.
they are. That's absolutely true. That's absolutely true. But I mean, to me, from a female perspective, I also say that women also have to speak up when there's a problem.
Mm-hmm.
They have to, and not necessarily in a militant way, but to say, hey, you know what? This is what I want, or this is how that's challenged, or this is the problem that I have.
Okay.
I think also we're taught oftentimes as young girls when you're growing up to be more subservient. I'm not that person, as everyone who knows me knows.
Shit.
But I think that's probably part of the reason I haven't experienced this as much as a lot of other women are, is because I am not that. I will stand up for myself. And honestly, the person who taught me that was my dad.
Okay. We have a question for you, actually, from iSushi, aka Ryan Butler. What can we do to help bring diversity to the guild? Kick out Ryan Butler.
Wow!
Busing.
No!
Say again?
Busing.
I don't know what that means.
Oh, you didn't live through that. Never mind.
Busing people in that aren't like you.
Oh, oh god, holy shit, that got dark. Forced busing, okay.
I think I would challenge every guild member to invite someone to become a member of the guild that doesn't look like the people who are in the guild right now. How about that?
Okay, interesting.
I think that's a great starting point.
Okay.
And you attract more people like yourself. Mm-hmm. So just like A players attract A players, B players attract C players, right? Mm-hmm. So if we kind of put the word out and do that.
Okay.
We've had more women join recently, so I think that's a plus.
We have. We absolutely have.
Right.
Actually, so University of Tampa, where I'm I drop my little propaganda down there through my little duckies. They have a substantial amount of women in cyber down there, and I think it might be from that's a very businessy school. And
I'm an entrepreneur in residence at UT.
Yeah,
so.
yeah. How they portray entrepreneurship in cyber.
The person who
draws...
runs the entrepreneurship program also happens to be a female.
Okay.
There's that too.
Okay. Sure. But I just think that's...
it's a very multicultural university, actually.
Yes.
So it's not just female. It's also very culturally and racially diverse.
Okay. I mean, I just as opposed to other schools where you have your stereotypical people coming into cyber, and like, not that that's a bad thing because we need people, but
we also get a lot of former military.
Yeah. That
come into cyber.
Cyber, yeah, that's all over the place.
Well, and just the numbers, right? The majority of the people who are in cyber-related fields in the military also happens to be more male-dominated than female-dominated.
Mm-hmm. Okay. As far as...
It does have to change, though, because we're more than 50% of the population now, so eventually it's going to change.
We're more than 50% of the population.
We are more than 50% of the population. Yeah, there you go.
As far as military coming into cyber, I'm one of those people, and I've met a lot of military coming into cyber, and getting out of the military, we're told, I mean, whether it's by the universities we go to or just the people we interact to, that cyber's kind of the golden goose, pay-wise and workload-wise. Is that...
Yes.
Okay. What do you think about that as far as what cyber gets paid, how much work we have to do? Do you think
the average, so if you've been in the cybersecurity field for more than, say, if you got 5 years experience, I'm just going to throw that out there because I'm thinking about this. Like, you got out of school, you got your certification for 5 years experience, a couple certifications, you would be in that top, 3 to 5% of earners.
Okay.
So I would argue that's pretty lucrative.
Do you think that we see a lot of people come into this industry that are attracted by the high figures?
But you've got to do it because it's something you want to do too, so it's not just about the money.
Yes, that's kind of what I was hinting at, is we see a lot of people that are just kind of here for the money, and then whenever it turns 5 o'clock and the whistle blows, they're like, okay, I'm out.
Well, you probably need a different kind of. Okay, so there are careers in cyber that you can do that. It depends on what you want to do. Again, so right, do you want to be the person who is hunting down the threats? Is that the job you want? Do you want to be the pre-sales engineer for a cybersecurity technology company because you still have to have all that knowledge to do that? Do you want to be somebody who's implementing those systems out in the field, right? That's putting those pieces in place. Do you want to work for somebody in the industry where you're responsible for how the selection of technology and how it gets deployed inside of your environment? Do you want to be an analyst who's looking at, what's happening and understanding how to adjust in order to mitigate threats every day? There's all kinds of roles that are out there. And some are a 9-to-5 job, but the vast majority of them, if you're going to be a hunter, are not.
I guess to kind of dump on the university system again, a lot of these.
Lord.
Well, I'm just saying, a lot of these students graduate, and it's like, okay, what do you want to do? I mean, how many Undercroft apprentices have you asked here that are in a 4-year program, and it's like, well, what do you want to do in cyber? And they're like, I don't know.
I have had that conversation with a few of them, although I think if you have the conversations more one-on-one, I found that they at least can understand kind of the areas they have that are of interest to them. And some of it you have to explore, you have to try it, right? This is the problem. If I'm a student and all I've had exposure to is what goes on in the classroom, and I haven't had a chance to actually participate in some CTFs or to experience what would it be like to be a pre-sales engineer, if I don't know what that is because nobody ever told me about it, right? Then how can I decide if it would be interesting to me?
Okay.
So again, it's I don't know what I don't know.
Yeah. Well, how do we fix the I don't know what I don't know part?
Well, that's what we're, okay, is this an advertorial? I'm like, so that's,
well,
but that's what we're here for. I mean, I think
Yes.
that's part of the problem, right? Asking these questions, understanding. So part of what we're doing here, right, in profiling the people that come in and become part of the guild is asking these questions okay, let me understand kind of where you are, right? Do you have any idea where you think you might want to go? Let's explore some things that can help you figure out what that might be. I've not met anyone, I shouldn't say that, there's a few, but generally the professional path, right? And Trey and I were talking about this the other day, it's not straight, right? I don't come in and say, ooh, this is what I want to do, and now I follow down this straight path. I certainly didn't, so I can't imagine anyone else does. I kind of go over here and I go, well, that was interesting, but now this new technology came out, and so now this is interesting, and I go do these things, right? At the end of the day. And
what? Did somebody hate on it?
And so at the end of the day, right, I've tried 2 or 3 things and kind of found out oh, this is a thing I really love. For me, I have built, I've sold 9 companies. I had a couple of miserable failures. I took 2 public, right? And I've developed a whole boatload of products that we brought to market and professional services, all these other things. What I love doing inside of being inside of a business is the scale part.
Okay.
Right? I can do any of those parts, but there's a part that you go wow, this is a part that really makes me happy, that energizes me, that gets me, is getting that part where you can actually help it really kind of get on a trajectory. So I think you have to learn that about yourself. What's the thing that you really enjoy? What motivates you to kind of want to do it within your domain? So I love cyber because it changes every second. I used to say it changes every day, but that's ridiculous because now it's already changed since, there's 5,000 breaches that have probably happened in the time we're having this conversation.
That's being optimistic.
Just saying, right?
We have a question from Keen Blaine again. Much of cybersecurity is focused on detecting and mitigating after the fact. How do we help front-load the cybersecurity effort into development of inherently secure platforms by design? Holy shit, he has your number.
Oh, no, so it's good. So actually 2 ways. So one, we actually have to have a really secure DevOps, which most people don't today. They suck at it. So, secure DevOps, where we're actually doing security and building security in. We need to build that security into the architecture when we're deploying systems versus just tacking crap on at the end, because that's not very helpful. And then all the systems don't function together because there was no forethought given to it. It's just bolting on garbage on top of an already broken system. And then the really big thing is changing people, right? Because at the end of the day, the whole problem with cyber is humans.
Okay.
Because we're always the weakest link. We do the dumb, stupid crap, right? Whether it is I clicked on a phishing email because it looked like it was from PayPal and I clicked on it, right? Or whether it's something as simple as the director of IT security goes in and says, hey, we really need to update these firewalls because they're 15 years old. And I'm dealing with something from like 1985, right? And, you know, the C-suite going, sorry, dude, it's not in the budget. And we just keep going, right? Or you used an Equifax example in the beginning, right? So I know there's a problem. We told the board, they chose not to do anything. Oh, wait, we told them again there's a problem. Oh, wait, they still chose not to do anything, and now they wonder how this happened. Really? So you got warned, not once, but twice.
And the person in charge of your information security isn't even qualified to do the damn job anyways.
But at the end of the day, right, you made 2 conscious decisions after knowing you had a vulnerability not to address the problem.
Yep. There was a company that I was going to do forensics for, and they knew somebody was running around in there and they were getting free pen tests courtesy of whoever, but they didn't want to do anything about it at the time because it was busy season, and this company was a government contractor, and at that...
And they got breached?
They'd already been breached. They were getting free pen tests out the ass. They just didn't want to acknowledge it, or they didn't want anybody telling them it. They knew it for a fact. Like, they had contractors, what was it, like 50 contractors that were on the books, but they were doing BYOD onto their
I would love to tell you that that's not common, but it's really common.
I know it's common.
I mean, you see it all the time.
Yeah, it's
you know, in talking to clients. So it's like, and even people who are being fined $40,000, $50,000 a month for non-compliance, and they just continue to ignore it until they don't really have a choice but to address the problem. So it's a problem.
And yeah, I mean, at this point, it's like, well, what the hell can we do about it?
Oh, yeah.
Wow. Okay. So I guess we kind of ended up at that point here. What can we do about it? What do you see as far as industry practitioners going? Where do you see the future of that going? Where are you trying to direct that?
I think there's a couple of things, right? So the architects who are architecting the solutions, right, like we talked about, they have to be better at it. And I think the pressure being put back on the technology companies, whether it be hardware or software, to deliver a product that, you know, is actually secure versus we say it's secure, but we have no idea. And then testing when you do the implementation, that's the other problem. So many companies say, okay, I'm going to architect this correctly, and maybe they did, and then I'm going to deploy it, but I've got multiple, you know, people playing in my sandbox to do this. And if you do that, now you get a lot of finger pointing because they're going to go, oh, it wasn't me, it was them. They did the wrong thing, blah, 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 right?
Is the 100% secure platform or application, is that possible?
Nope.
Okay. But, I mean, we can get close.
Maybe.
Maybe.
Define close. Could I park a Honda Civic in it or a semi?
Gotcha.
Right?
But, I mean, regardless, yeah, okay.
Because the code's going to constantly be updated, right? And so each time you do that, there's a potential to introduce a new vulnerability. And every time there's a piece of code that's put out, there's this boatload of people on the other side who are attempting to break that code. It's what they do, because it's how they make a living. So I personally do not believe there's any such thing as a 100% secure system, no matter whose system it is.
Well, and one issue one issue that it's kind of near and dear to my heart is we're cranking out these quote-unquote ethical hackers at whatever speed we're cranking them out.
That's cool.
But, I mean, it's very hard. Like, what we need is that 1980s style hacker that's been, you know, programming, that, you know, has, at the age of 12.
I can't teach you to think, right?
Yeah.
So this is the whole problem, right? So because part of, let's use a CEH as an example, right? Certified Ethical Hacker, right? Or pen tester, we can call it. We can give them a million different names, right? So I can teach you how to do the basics of a network pen test.
Yep.
I'm just going to use, because there's a million types of pen tests. So let's use a network pen test as part of this. So there's the internal side and there's the external side, right? So the external side is much easier to kind of get a clean bill of health, shall we say?
Yeah, because all you need is just
because I'm doing this, I keep going. It's like
firewall.
blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
The inside, though, there's all these other vulnerabilities. So there's vulnerabilities not only in how the system is assembled, but there's vulnerabilities that are the people who are working for the company. Who has rights? Who doesn't have rights? Who's an admin? Who isn't? How do I escalate privileges? Who gets to look at this? Can people walk away with things? Can people change my settings? Like, how do all these other things work? So there's all these other pieces that come into play there. And that's going to constantly change too, right? I mean, nobody goes to, well, I won't say that. Most people don't go to work for a company and work there for a decade anymore. It's not how it works, right?
That's universal. Like the days of staying at your company for 30 years and then getting a gold
people
watch
go
and
in, they're
retire.
there a year, 2 years, maybe 3 years, right? Kind of thing. So the people are changing out too. Therefore, the skill levels are changing. Each time those people change out. Who knows the system? Who doesn't know the system? So all those vulnerabilities get introduced there again. So probably one of the easiest ways to do it is to reevaluate your architecture on a regular basis, as well as have a consistent training for all of your staff. I want to upskill those people all the time. So I actually have to keep the people who work for me current on their skill sets. And then I have to create a mechanism to train new people that are coming in to bring them up to speed. So inside of my company, very much like what we do here with apprentices and journeymen, I need to have the same methodology inside of my company where I have somebody shadowing so I can actually have someone learning all the time.
Yes.
It's still not 100% perfect, but that seems to be the companies that I know that have employed practices like that, and some of them we've advised to do so, they do a much better job.
Well, and that's kind of an interesting model because at that point you're not farming for certifications, you're not farming for level of education, you're farming for a specific set of traits.
Well, right, and I'm happy to have people, and we've done this for people that work for us. I'm happy for you to go get a certification. It's not that I'm anti that, right? That's great.
Yes.
But just the certification alone isn't going to make you, great at what you do.
That's what a lot of this industry believes. I just saw it pop up in the events chat that everybody thinks CEH equals that. Okay, this person's a hacker, and it's like, no, dude.
I would say the person has some basic skills. So minimum requirement to be a CEH. There's some that are amazing, right? So minimum requirement is I got some basic skills and I'm a good test taker.
And that's like, I come from the school of thought that thinks the CEH is a complete and utter joke. But whichever cert you pick, right? There's a whole bunch of them, but they're the same kind of thing, right? Yeah.
From a hacker perspective, right?
Yes.
So it could be the GPen, it could be the CEH, it could be like whatever your flavor of the day is at the end of the day.
But I mean, and I guess the point that is you're absolutely right in the sense that, okay, you know how to do this thing and you know how to do it during the test. But if you want it, like, how do I do this one thing outside of what I taught you?
But that's thinking. That's critical thinking skills,
critical
right?
thinking.
And you're going to learn that by being exposed to different environments, to seeing different things, right, that are out there. And part of it also is just being inquisitive at the end of the day, right? And to be able to say, well, okay, why did it happen that way? Not, did it just happen? Like, but why? Right, and if I had, what things could I put in place in order to prevent that particular vulnerability from appearing? Are there things I could have done as a part of that process? It's kind of like the conversation we were having before the camera came on. Yeah. Right? So if you think about that, and we were talking about encryption and as it relates to things like child pornography, and how do things like that happen? So it's interesting. I mean, there's tools today, right? Because for years, like looking at things like child porn, which is a horrible thing. Law enforcement officers, people like that, got PTSD from looking at the images. So now there's technology that's available. Like one of the companies, a company called PhotoDNA.
So actually, there's Autopsy, who does that open source platform. What they'll do is they'll take hashes of child pornography pictures that we already know to exist. Yes. And that way you can just check the database to see if that hash already is there.
Exactly.
Anyways.
Right. And law enforcement uses that on a regular basis. And then like PhotoDNA, same thing. It's an image analysis tool. That's designed to look, and some of them go to the point of not just known entities, right? Because the known child pornography images get recirculated over and over and over again. So it's very easy to track that. But there's also technology that will look at the amount of skin exposed, and it actually takes into account height and weight and all these other things to determine, is it a child, is it an adult, is it, all of these other things. And so those kind of things happen on a regular basis. I know this because the person that my person I live with, right, has testified in these cases in federal court and prosecuted people. So it's very interesting when you were talking about what happens with the government, because this guy's lawyer argued on one of these cases that that what they did was illegal, that they couldn't have possibly gotten this information legally without, all this stuff. It's like, well, sure they could.
Yeah, fruit of the poisonous tree and all that.
Right. So of course they could, because the reality is they simply looked at the images in transmission. So absolutely they could. Right. Yep. And if I know you went from this IP address and this MAC address to this IP address and this MAC address, there's no question of was it there. And that was what was enough to get the warrant for the computer in the first place. And, so I find it interesting. I mean, they lost, which is good. Yeah. But at the end of the day, there's there's great AI technology, right, like that we've created that can be hugely beneficial.
Well, and that makes me think of another question. So we have a 3.6 million job shortage in the industry. How many of those, like, how much shortage is there for good quality cyber people in government and law enforcement? I mean, how many people really know digital forensics in law enforcement and in government? I mean, if we look at whenever Mark Zuckerberg went up on Capitol Hill to testify, there were like 3 senators calling him Mr. Facebook.
Well, there's that.
It's like, so is the onus on our leadership here too to unlodge?
Okay, there's such a lack of understanding, right? They're like, oh, well, you should absolutely be able to police all this. It's like, do you guys have any understanding of anything?
Yeah, and that's part of the reason why I'm so hard on compliance is like, so you guys are telling me the standard, but like, do you know what day it is? Do you know, like, okay, log on.
Well, compliance is important, but it's not. Compliance isn't security. There's a difference.
Yes, I agree with you.
Right, so compliance is important, and it's designed to put safeguards in place to protect businesses, to protect people, to protect privacy, all these other things. So it's great to have compliance, but the checkbox on a compliance checklist does not mean you're secure. You can be compliant and insecure.
Yes.
And vice versa. You can be secure and incompliant.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'd argue I'd rather be secure and incompliant than the other way around.
Well, a lot of big companies wouldn't because they get fined for that other one. So.
Well, I mean, we're starting to see that, like, just kind of eating, and I mean, even if you get breached, and you, like, what was that one company? Not Anthem. Maybe it was Anthem.
They got breached.
Yeah, they did get breached, but they just pretty much ate, like, it was like a $5 million fine, and it's like, fuck you, we make that in 5 minutes.
Well, you do have that problem. I think some of the things that we're seeing, like, not that we've instituted here yet, but I think will be coming, are things like GDPR, right, that the UK instituted, where I supposedly have the right to be forgotten, right? So I could go to Facebook, and Facebook has to comply with this because I don't have to live in the UK. I just have to be a UK citizen. I can live anywhere. And I can say, take my data, I want you to eradicate all the data and give me a record of everything that you have. And legally, you have to do that today. And the fines are quite significant. So I think that you're going to start to see some of these changes happen. The problem is now that impacts people's revenue stream. So it changes a whole lot of other things because telling me that you anonymize my data doesn't really work anymore. Like, you can't use my data anonymously under GDPR either.
And I mean, whenever the GDPR came out, I mean, you saw email upon email from companies. Hey, we've upped our privacy standards, and does it work? Is my question.
We've seen the first fines come out for GDPR, and and it was actually U.S. companies that had to pay out.
Yes, and I mean the fines are going, but I guess where I'm concerned is eating a fine a viable business strategy instead of improving your posture?
I think it depends on how much the fine is and how often it occurs. So if you said, oh, I'm a large national bank. I'm not going to name any. I can't think about it like this. I'm not going to name a name. A large national bank, and I got 3 fines of $50K of I don't know, $200,000 a piece. Right? That's a lot of money. It's almost $1 million, right? Is it a lot of money to one of the top 3 banks in this country? No.
No, absolutely not.
Right?
Not even health insurance.
So I think that they don't want that because it's the black eye. So the PR associated with it is probably, more destructive than actually the fine itself.
Which I guess have any of the businesses that you've worked with or worked for, have you guys had to encounter that? Have you guys had to look at the man and stand him down?
I've testified in front of the SEC twice.
Okay, you want to talk about that?
No.
Okay. What about what horror stories can you talk about?
We won and we prevailed in both cases in front of the SEC. But It is very to say it's intimidating to speak in front of the SEC is being kind.
Sure.
So yeah, I mean, we have a lot of our clients, right? So I mean, in our company, we've dealt with things like that. I generally advise clients it's better to be compliant than it is to deal with it, because what will happen eventually, they stop fining you, and then it becomes more critical because they believe you're ignorant. The SEC has actually come out for all public companies now and said that you actually must disclose your cyber risk in your report. because investors are, putting money there, and you have to disclose what your potential cyber risk is.
I'm seeing a comment in the events channel that compliance is just ass covering, but
I think it depends on the company.
it doesn't have to be.
I mean, I would argue, okay, to that point, I would say being PCI compliant is a pretty big deal.
Yes.
Because otherwise, every customer who comes through your organization, you're putting their personal finances and their PII at risk.
So,
I would argue things like FSMA, right? If we are going to...
Yes. My first question that I want to think on that would be, if a company is compliant but they still get their PII breached or something still out there, then what's the point of them being compliant?
Well, now they actually have to pay you as the other side. So now that's where all the class action lawsuits come in. So they were compliant, but they were still breached. So there's still something else that they should have done in order to actually secure that data.
So does that mean compliance, should it be updated? Should compliance fall short? Should the industry be designated compliance?
I think compliance should be enforced more stringently than it is today. And I believe the compliance standards should be revised more frequently than they are.
Okay.
So like PCI, for example, is revised every 3 years. That seems rather realistic to me.
Okay.
And we have a lot of other things, say for instance, like SOX, that are not. We have things like, it's interesting, we have companies listed on our public stock exchanges where all of the U.S. companies have to be SOX compliant, and they're not required to. In particular, Chinese companies that are not required to, but they're publicly traded on our stock exchange.
Yeah, and that's absolutely an issue. Who do you think that maybe the people writing the compliance are inefficient? Should we have more industry?
I think depending on which compliance, then I would agree with that, yes.
Okay.
So most of the compliance organizations,
HIPAA,
not
for example.
all, HIPAA is just kind of antiquated.
No shit.
But in general, you actually end up with task force, ISALs, we can call them whatever you want, right? So you end up with groups of people that are made up of industry experts that are actually practitioners in the field, like our people are today.
Yes.
That are helping set the next standard. That's not across all types of compliance.
And I love that idea. I absolutely love that idea.
Those compliance platforms that tend to do that tend to perform better because it's more real world data that's being related.
Yeah, that's common sense right there. That if you have the people that are actually enacting the compliance and they're the boots on the ground, no shit.
But compliance won't fix everything. Security is still security. So at the end of the day, compliance is great. It gives some level of assurance. It makes sure that we don't do things that are illegal. But it still doesn't mean that you're secure.
Do you think the industry as a whole and compliance as a whole is behind the curve as far as what these TTPs are?
If you're looking at as a whole, and so I'm not pulling out the 3 or 4 I think do it well. Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
What do you think will fix that? What do you think this industry needs?
The government would have to regulate it. As much as I hate saying that.
Yeah,
because they're not going to change it unless they have to. Like certain organizations will, because they demand it. For instance, PCI. The reason that PCI actually does what it does is because the card brands own PCI. Well, so the card brands set the standards and the fines and all the other things. So in order to process a credit card payment, you're going to adhere to it. So they did it for financial reasons, right? To limit their liability. So they police it much more stringently. However, things like SOX, right?
Yeah.
It's a completely different game.
Yeah. And I've seen the government kind of try its hand at that, like with CMMC, just because I think everybody in the cybersecurity industry is sick and tired of hearing about how all these, like, Russia, China, Romania, all these countries are essentially eating our contractors for lunch. Boeing's getting smoked. Northrop Grumman's getting smoked. All these companies are getting smoked.
But CMMC, right? So CMMC is very interesting. So they postponed it again, right? So
they did.
We postponed it. CMMC, and for anybody who doesn't know, right, kind of what it is, it's really supply chain compliance at the end of the day.
Yeah.
It would be so amazing.
Even though Kobe shilled it.
But it would be so amazing, right? If not only they did this for government contractors, but we did it in the private sector as well.
Yes.
Because most of the breaches, right, if we look at all the breaches combined, it's either someone inside the organization, which is the number one, and or they are related to supply chain. It literally makes up over 80%.
Yeah.
So if we corrected the supply chain problem, imagine what that would do. Oh wait, then maybe we're cyber jobs. Let's not do that.
Well, I mean, I'm kind of having my first brush with the CMMC on this job I'm doing with Cam, and I mean, pretty much all the options we're looking at is in the CMMC is that one of the M's stands for Microsoft, because Microsoft is apparently the only company that meets the regulations and that meets the standards for CMMC.
In what way?
Communications, data storage.
No way.
I mean, even with the direction that the GovCloud is going.
Well, but that's because there's some people in bed with some
Yeah,
people, right? Kind of thing,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
But no, there are actually definitely other communication platforms and things that can meet that standard.
Okay.
We shouldn't probably have a vendor conversation.
Yeah,
here, but
yeah. I was kind of dialing that one back. You want to go ahead and move to Q&A, or?
Yeah, unless you have any.
No, we're just. I'm gonna be honest. It feels like we were 15 minutes in, like just how this.
Cool. So.
Can they hear you, Chris?
Yes, they can.
Okay, cool.
I think. Yes.
I don't know if they
Yep.
can hear you.
Yes, they can. Okay. So we've got first question here is from Tracy. She's asking if you remember the NSA line eater prefixes on the 80s email messages.
Yes.
Yeah. All right, there we go. Joseph, how many hours per week is reasonable to excel in the cybersecurity field?
Fucking 500.
Reasonable as it relates to like training or working.
Well, it's
or...
like John touched on earlier. You know, I know you're in this industry. It's your passion. It's what you do. You live, eat, breathe it. You go home. You're all about it. Some people coming into the field, you know, they think that they can go get their degree, do a 9 to 5, and that's going to be adequate. So I think Joseph's asking, you know.
I think it depends on what you want to do. So I believe that, you know, again, it depends on what part of cyber you choose as your career. I think that most people, if you are really into cybersecurity, you know, your average work week, heck, no matter what you do, your average work week is probably 50, 60 hours, right? No matter what you do. Today, kind of employers expect that if you're going to be employed by someone else. If you own your own company, I'm not sure you get to ever not have hours.
Yeah.
But I would also say, because most people who work in this are naturally curious, and we sort of have this skepticism with which we look at everything. We tend to question things. So I think we're always looking at, hey, what's that angle behind there? So I think your brain's kind of, you know, almost always working as to, oh, like what's going on with this? And, you know, how could that be exploited? And I have people like, somebody asked me the other day, like, well, you don't have IoT at your house, do you? I'm like, of course I do, but I have it in a completely separate secure network. Yeah. Like, I mean, we have 5 networks in our house, for Christ's sake.
Yeah.
I'm like...
Well, and what's kind of interesting about that, and you might have seen this way more than I have, is how all these people, like, I've seen people that'll give 18 hours a day and still think they're not doing enough. Like, imposter syndrome in this industry is so real.
Well, I think it's, and you want to be the best, you do things like that. I'll give you a good example. So Dave Shackelford, who's an instructor, right, for SANS, and he has his own company as well. So Dave's a really, really smart guy. So if you take SANS classes, I would highly recommend his classes. Dave literally, I was laughing one day because I was hanging out with him at a bar. He's like, yeah, it's my job. It's my hobby. Right. And then, but he also reads classical novels and rereads them over and over again. So that's kind of like his mental break. I think you have to have at least one other thing that you do, because we need our brains to be able to reset because you're processing so much. So I believe you have to have
Burnout's a real
something like
thing.
for me, I love scuba diving, right? So I'm a scuba diver, and I had a friend one time tell me they were going to get me like this underwater iPod. I'm like, for Christ's sake, no. Like, I love the fact that once I go under the surface, like, I don't hear, so like I have to pay constant attention to what's really right there present in front of me. And that's kind of the mental break from that perspective. So, I mean, you can easily work 100 hours a week if that's what you want to do. But I also think if you're a really productive person, you can probably work 60 hours a week and, do a really kick-ass job.
Follow up from Joseph. What pay can you negotiate right now during the pandemic with a degree and some certs but no experience?
Oh, that sucks. That sucks.
I don't know. I mean, I think there's certainly,
Set up a baseline.
I don't know. I don't know what the certs are in, so that makes it hard to say. But there certainly are a lot of people looking for remote workers. If you're doing, a lot of work can be done remotely, so there's no requirement to physically be on site to do a lot of the work. There are some things, we were talking about this the other day, that you can't do remotely, no matter what. It's not going to work at the end of the day. But I mean, I don't know, a degree, a couple of certs, so if you're working for a local company, it could be anywhere as low as like $50K to maybe $60K, something like that. Maybe a little more. If you're working for somebody who's a bigger national company, probably 75.
Okay, and let's see. If humans are the biggest factor, how can we educate end users through the undercroft, i.e. non-tech or security people, to understand the threat and simple mitigation techniques?
They have to willing to be educated.
Well, funny, you should bring that up.
That's from Alex,
yeah.
so yeah.
So we were actually having a conversation about this earlier. So we've had it a few different times. So we're actually looking at some programming that will be available to the general public. That's specifically for that. So we were talking about some different topics around, how do we tell people how to do the basic things to protect their privacy? Like, how do you lock down your phone? How do you, should you have a personal VPN, right? How do you do these basic things? If I'm going to have, Alexa and 15 other devices on my home network, how do I segment that out, without it costing me $5 million?
Right.
And we would welcome people who are part of the guild members to participate in that.
Okay.
It would probably need to happen. I got a single Slack question real quick.
Go for it.
From Tate. How do we push open source hardware in our organizations without looking like idealistic communist hippies? To quote my supervisor. Maybe you should stop being a hippie, Tate.
Wow. I think it's, so here's what I would say. Looking at it from the company point of view, because I've been in both sides of this, it's very hard for a larger company, medium to large size company, a small company, you can do whatever you want. It's very hard to get them to adopt something like that because it's not a standard, and they're looking to standardize things. I mean, if they're a big company, they definitely want a standard because they need to have standard images, they need to have all these other things, right, when they're doing deployment. So I think in a big company, it's going to be really, really difficult unless it's used in some subset in a specialty area. And then I say, pick the best tool for the job.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I'd even posit, whoever says that open source hardware is like hippie, they're a boomer. Fuck them. Sorry, that's all I had to say.
Okay.
Really? Okay. Whatever. And so John just alienated every CISO on the planet.
Speaking
right
of
there.
being
Boom, done.
inclusive, right?
Yeah, speaking of being inclusive.
Yeah.
That's not very inclusive.
Well, as I know that you guys mentioned earlier, a lot of people in cyber, in the industry, are veterans. They come
Yes.
from that side of things. So, as a veteran, I've been looking for a purpose and meaning in my post-military career. How does the cybersecurity industry help me continue the fight?
I think there's two ways. You could choose to work for a contractor that primarily deals with the government. If you are in the military, getting your clearance would be a walk in the park. If you don't have one right now, super easy. That's harder for people who didn't come from a military background in the first place, right? Like me, like I have mine, but like it's not as easy for us because they already know everything they need to know about you, the person on the other side, right? But I also think you could do that. You can work in the private sector as well. I mean, the difference is the critical thinking skills that you learned in the military will definitely help you from a DoD perspective. Not that they couldn't help you in the private sector, but there's an advantage to that. So to me, I would probably maybe look there first, and you can decide if you want to move out into the private sector afterwards. I've certainly had people come to work for us working with private sector clients versus public sector clients that came out of the public sector that were great at what they do. Like analysts, it's
Yep.
very different, like from an
Yep.
analyst perspective, because of
Yeah.
what they're looking for. They have to be so meticulous when they're doing it, you know, on the military side, than what is required in the private sector. So, hands down, the best analysts I've ever hired came with military backgrounds.
And like, I think it's if you tell like a junior Marine or junior whoever, I want this done by tomorrow morning. I don't care how long it takes for you to do it. I don't care what you have to do. By tomorrow morning, they'll have it done. Even if it's like, well, I stayed up until 4 a.m., Staff Sergeant, and blah. Where I mean, and if you
Well, you
tell,
don't really get a choice. It's
yeah,
not
you
like
don't
it's
get
optional.
it, but by the time they're out, they're used to doing whatever it needs to, like whatever it takes for
Yeah, of
mission
course.
accomplishment.
Yeah.
And like, I've seen little onesies and twosies there that were like staff or something, and they were like, oh, I'll get somebody else to do this. But
Well, when people's lives are on the line, you have a tendency to
Yeah.
man up, so to
Yeah.
speak.
yeah,
Man
absolutely.
up, woman up. I don't really care what you call it, right?
Sack, I mean, even sack up is like not.
So I have a question. So you and I have had many conversations
Yeah.
over the last couple of years, and you've told me some pretty crazy stories about former situations. Now
Yes.
I know that was behind closed doors. Are there any horror stories that you can think of that come to mind, maybe about compliance, situation you were in, something like that?
Oh God. Let me
If you
think
can't
about
talk
this.
about it, it's fine.
No. So, in dealing with a government contract, right? There was an issue where there was we had to let someone go who had falsified records. That was a foreign national. So not particularly cool at that point in time. And then something that might be that people might appreciate. So Business Layer is one of the companies we had that was bought by Integrity. I was in Paris on 9/11,
Oh shit.
and it took me 2 weeks to get home because they actually 16 days because no non-U.S. aircraft could
Yeah,
come.
they must have
Everything
closed all
was
the
interdiction.
airports. Like,
So I mean, literally, I was watching Americans walk around. You know, I was lucky because the company's paying my hotel, right? And I just refused to check out. I'm like, screw, I'm not leaving. Can't throw me out in the street. Sorry. But it was very interesting when I came back. So I flew into Kennedy, and the towers are gone. And one of the guys who worked for me, he was there. His dad owned a flight school. Who trained one of the pilots, and his dad was former military, and just was beside himself. But the guy had presented all the documentation, right? The FBI's out going through everything and stuff. The guy presented all the documentation. Everything looked legit. I mean, there was nothing this man could have done to have prevented this. But the other thing that this particular experience taught me, so my partners in that business were Israelis. So there were 6 of us, 4 Israelis, myself, and a gentleman named Adrian Viego, who's now deceased, who was Eric Schmidt at Novell's right-hand man. Eric came from Novell, and he was our CTO. So Adrian was stuck in San Diego. I'm stuck in Paris. And he lives in New Jersey, right? I'm in Paris. I talked to Izar, who's our CEO, and Izar's like, wherever you people are in the world, we will pay whatever it takes to get them home to their families. We don't care. The company will foot the bill for it. So get in touch with them and tell them however they need to do to get home to their families. We've got it covered. And he goes, don't you know the CEO of our competitor, right? Our number one competitor. I said, I do. He goes, well, their offices were in the Trade Center.
oh shit.
And he goes, which I knew, right? And he's like, if you can reach him, my understanding is they're probably all okay. If you can reach him, tell them they can come use our office until they get a new office.
Wow,
Now, what this taught me, so I've worked with Israelis many times in my life. So I've worked with Israelis previously. All of our development was done in Israel. The majority of our employees, we had 27 different nationalities in our company. But we had a lot of Israelis. Our whole dev team was Israeli. What we sometimes don't understand, because we don't have wars on our soil. The people who are alive today don't understand what that's like. It's common occurrence for them.
Yep.
And he was like, it's just the mindset of how they look at things is so different. And what this taught me was how magnanimous they really can be and how quickly they come together in a time of crisis. It's amazing. And honestly, I keep in touch with him to this day. And just some of the best human beings I've ever had the opportunity to work with. Kind of seeing things like that. So yeah, there's been a lot of crazy stuff. And on that particular day, Jeff's dad was at the Pentagon. And he was in Manhattan. And I'm like, I can't get anybody on the phone. And I have no idea. And it literally took me 10 hours to get through. So it's a freaky feeling to find out. But then he's like, no, he goes, I've talked to my dad. Everybody's okay. So we're all good now.
Yeah, I think I've heard that one. That was great.
Fuck.
Yep.
Wow.
Well, I think that's it for.
Yeah, that's it on Slack.
So
Sweet.
If you have any updates or anything.
No, that's it on Slack.
So, yeah.
Do you have anything else about Baseline or anything else that you're doing within the Undercroft that you want to discuss?
Or any other projects that you have.
Yeah, any projects that you're working on or anything. This is the joy hour here.
This is the joy hour.
Yeah.
Well, I am going to give another talk in the fall, but it will be an in-person talk, and it will not be recorded or broadcast. It's for members only. And the reason for that is because I'm going to share a very personal story that I don't want to have put out.
Yeah, okay.
So we'll let you guys know when that's going to come. So that'll be probably sometime in the mid to late fall.
We shouldn't even stream it.
Yeah, Ryan Butler's asking more about Baseline.
So, so Baseline?
No, I didn't see that question. I'm just saying for that story, we shouldn't even stream it. That should.
We're not.
Yeah.
No.
It's not. I said there's no cameras. I was very clear on that.
I'll take phones whenever people come in.
We're doing it later. Hopefully we can get.
Yeah.
We'll wait until it's not crazy town.
Yeah, I'll take phones. Frisk motherfuckers.
But I think we're doing things where we're doing some more programming to the general public. So we would love to get more feedback from either the public, because this is public broadcast today, or from guild members about what they think, or they're talking to friends and family, like what they would like to see in that. I would love to hear that feedback. That's in there. We're super excited about Baseline, and we're only just over 2 weeks away, right? 2.5, 3 weeks, right?
Yep.
So I think that's going to be really cool. There's an excellent opportunity for people who are in the guild to get it for a dirt cheap price. It's already about half of what it would cost if there were anybody else even offering such a thing at the normal price, and then guild members are getting it for half of that. So a really great opportunity. And for people who come in, who take the courses, they'll get a whole month to be a member of the guild and kind of get to see what it's like and associate with guild members and stuff as a part of that. I don't know, we've got there's a lot of stuff kind of in the works right now. So I think you're going to see some more partnerships that people are going to see come out that will be very beneficial. And we're looking at, we took a lot of feedback from the guild members. I actually sent direct messages out to tons of people in the guild. And if I did not message you, please message me with anything that you want to see from a programming perspective. But we got some really cool feedback. And so for some more advanced things for people who are in there, we're now reaching out to instructors, and we've got some people that we're going to try to line up for those kind of courses next quarter.
I got nothing.
All right. Thanks, Joy.
Okay, Joy. Thank you.
Hey, thank you, and thank the guilds for being here.
Fuck.
Dude,
no.
I will apologize for John.
No, everybody, thank you for tuning in tonight. This talk, I just got called a whore. Okay, thank you, Tracy.
That's fair at this point.
Yeah. So yeah, everybody, thank you for tuning in. This talk went quick. I gotta say, this felt like about 15 minutes of communication here.
Yeah.
This is one of the people who's kind of helping and steering the ship here. So, if you've learned anything tonight, and if you've been impressed at all tonight, or if you've been impressed with anything regarding what the Undercroft is doing or the direction that we're taking, chances are Joy's responsible for it. Unless it's something like lewd or vulgar and really funny, in which case I'm responsible for it. I think we're done, dude. Folks, so this was the first instance of our Cyber Chronicles interview series. Whenever Joy told that horror story, I got an idea for who the second person or third person is going to be. I'm going to tell Chris whenever the camera turns off, but this is going to be sick.
So thank you, Nigel, for being here.
Nigel. Yeah, Nigel Jammy Dodger. He was the one who did the introduction. For you Americans, Jammy Dodger sounds like something really, really funny that you'd select on Pornhub. But to the British, a Jammy Dodger is a cookie with jelly in it. So, yeah, that's that.